All right, guys, got an email here from a stream follower where I asked people to send questions, and he said it would be okay to DM you some questions on your last live stream. Could you answer some business questions for me? And he sent a bunch of really interesting questions here. So, hey, Dominion Strength. So, thought I would answer those here in a moment. We'll get a few people in here and and answer these 7 questions. Pretty interesting. I know this gentleman. He's a machinist, young man. He's a machinist. He's really working hard to learn his trade and get a business off the ground. And he's got some good questions here. Caveat. I've owned and started and bought and sold small businesses and done well, but things are different. Things are changing a lot, and they're different already. And from when I was doing it as more in earnest, and also I kind of got in early. I got in early as I got into business for myself when I was in my early 20s, really at about the same time that the boomers were hitting their stride. So I was in my early 20s and they were in their early 40s, and I kind of got to ride that boomer wave, and things are harder now. But he's got some good questions here. 1, what are the best books for business, marketing, finance, management, etc., especially concerning determining whether a business is worth buying or not? Hey, Matt Rogers. The best books for business, marketing, finance, management. In my opinion, the best books on business management are by Peter Drucker. The Effective Executive, The Practice of Management. Really, anything by Drucker is gonna treat you pretty well. So go read that Peter Drucker stuff. Marketing, I don't think anybody knows anything about marketing. Almost everybody's lying about it. Most people don't get to actually do marketing. We get to do advertising and sales. And so marketing is what Apple had to do when they invented the iPhone, because there was no market for it. People didn't know what the darn thing was, how to use it, what the purpose might be, what the value proposition was, and they had to create a market for it. And that's typically, at least in my mind, what marketing means. And small business people typically aren't in the business of marketing. They're in the business of advertising, letting people know that they have a good or service, and then sales, getting those people to then buy. So for small business, I don't really think you need to worry about marketing, but you do need to worry about sales. And I love Jeffrey Gitomer, reading Jeffrey, Gitomer, reading his books on sales. It's been a long time since I've read any of those, but he was a big help to me. There are people in small business, and I do this. Small businesses do benefit a lot from doing direct marketing or direct sales. So you do advertising directly to a group of people who are very likely to buy from you. And I love Perry Marshall's stuff about that, about direct marketing. But he says, what are these books that are good, especially concerning determining whether a business is worth buying or not? I think you need to read the Benjamin Graham book. I think you've got to read Graham, The Intelligent Investor, and then you need to get a book on reading financial statements and learn how to read financial statements. Hopefully, you can find a mentor or a friend that has bought and sold businesses and that can help you look at those businesses, look at those financials, look at those contracts inside that business, and help you determine if they're a good value or not. But most folks don't know how to do that. I love doing that. That's some of the most fun stuff that I've ever done is evaluating businesses for potential purchase and putting prices on those. I really enjoy that. But the Benjamin Graham book can teach you about that. Reading the Berkshire Hathaway shareholder letters can help teach you about that. But ultimately, buying a small business, I think, is a very personal decision, and the analysis you do has to be an analysis that helps you determine if it meets your needs, and that means that you'll need to know exactly what those needs are. You'll need to know a lot about what your goals are when you're buying a business. There are some businesses you buy that really aren't businesses, they are jobs. You buy yourself a good job, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then there are other businesses that return on capital and have lots of good, healthy processes in them, and just generate cash, and that's a different kind of thing. You'll just have to figure out what you want to do and what's available in your marketplace and in your industry, and then figure out what those things are selling for. Most industries, well, I mean, virtually all of them have trade associations, and then inside those trade associations, there are almost certainly going to be a couple of individuals or organizations that broker deals. And talking to those people about, in general, what are the prices, what are the valuations look like, what are the multiples of earnings these businesses are selling for, what kind of deals have gone on in the last 6 months. That can be very, very helpful. So look at that. Any questions about that stuff, guys? 2, our man writes, I have already downloaded all learning materials, management strategies, ask about profit margins on different produce to goods, and floor plans from the company I work at. What else should I be observing or looking at while they're paying to train me? Well, I don't want you stealing any intellectual property. I don't want you committing any sort of corporate espionage. But you do want to learn, right? There's nothing against, there are no laws or rules against you learning about the industry. And I happen to know that this guy is a machinist, and he's interested in getting his own machine shop running. So knowing that, and this actually goes, I think, for most businesses, you need to really pay close attention to what their sales process is like. Learn how to sell in your industry. Learn how they do it. Learn what their sales funnel looks like. Learn how they kick that sales funnel off. What do they do to get leads in the door? What do they do to close those leads? What kind of materials do they have? What kind of contracts do they use? Again, don't steal anything, but you need to have an idea about what those sales funnels look like and what those processes look like, and what somebody who's successful is doing. So, don't be a crook, but definitely learn all you can about their sales processes in addition to these things you've already mentioned. Most people that are in small business are good at what they do, Excuse me. If you run into a guy who's a heating and air contractor, runs his own HVAC business, he's probably a pretty good HVAC man. The thing he may not be good at is selling. He may have a hard time asking for the price. He may have a hard time evaluating the client's needs and providing them with proper options that move them towards a sale, So, learn how to sell. Adam Darby says, what is the topic today? I'm answering some questions about small business that a guy DM'd me. When we were just talking about, earlier we talked about books, and now we're talking about what should he be learning from his current employer. Of course, learn everything you can about the trade, learn everything you can about that industry, but excuse me, learning as much as you can about their sales process is really important. And part of the sales process at most small businesses is the pricing strategy. Our pricing strategies at all my businesses have always been based on, well, three things. Not three things. We always had three price schedules. One we called our competitive price schedule. If we knew we were bidding in a competitive situation, we would offer one set of prices. We had another price schedule that was non-competitive. If we knew that we were a vendor of choice and weren't having to bid against somebody, we asked for a higher price. And then we had a third set of pricing, which was we called it our PITA price, or pain in the ass price. If we knew that the client was going to be a pain in the ass, we priced it so high that if we got it, number one, it would probably run them off. But two, if we got it, we wouldn't be unhappy about it. So we had three pricing strategies, and then those prices were sort of fixed relative to each other, but the prices moved up and down depending on how much capacity we had, what our backlog was, and so on. So you need to figure out what that strategy is like in your organization, or figure out what it would be like in an organization that you're going to build. The salespeople in a small business, sometimes you're the only salesperson, but in a small business situation, having a pricing strategy that makes sense to the salespeople and helps them do what they need to do and makes the business profitable is the key, and it's hard to come up with. And so if you can see how someone else is doing it, and apply that to your situation and get a big leg up. It took me a long time to figure out how to do it. I have a decent intuition for that stuff, and in the beginning it was intuition, and we came out okay. But as it got bigger, as organizations I ran got bigger, we had to be able to get away from my intuition and codify how we do prices. So be watching for that. You guys jump in with questions you have about this stuff as I monologue about it. I'm gonna have a coughing fit here. Can I mute this? Summer cold turned into bronchitis. It's killing me. His third item here, he says, this is about a good sized paragraph here. It's good, it's thoughtful. He says, my plan is to buy a property to move my shop to and save the rent. Now remember, he has a little machine shop. He says, I'll keep my existing customer for a value stream with my machine shop. I'll also expand to gunsmithing to keep an alternative income stream that has many customers that can pay me in cash or bartering, even though they won't be providing the big money. The CNC machines will be reserved for the business-to-business transactions for my largest client, while I can do the gunsmithing on the manual machines. If I want to expand, it seems better to buy an existing machine shop that already has a client in a different industry and inserting it as a separate income stream that would be trying to expand it one machine at a time without having an additional client or any of the fixtures. Am I overlooking something? Goodness gracious. No, sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan. Oh, Lady Fern Sewing says, I feel pretty hamstrung on what to charge folks by the returns. I can offer a reasonable rate, but that's finance. Yeah, you're stuck. People in finance. I don't know. Well, maybe you're not stuck, right? In the personal finance. Yeah, let me restate that. She says, I feel pretty hamstrung on what to charge folks by the returns I can reasonably generate, but that's finance. Yeah, so in the finance world, if you have a personal financial advisor, they often will charge you a percentage of the managed portfolio, right? 1% a year, 0.8% a year, something like that. And that's okay. That's okay, but there are different things that you could potentially do, I think. You could create 2 or 3 model portfolios, enroll people in one of those 3 portfolios, let's say, and then charge them a monthly subscription. So you could that would allow you to manage monies for smaller accounts and do it in a profitable way. So you're just gonna have to really think about it and figure it out. You're not you're not trapped in the percentage of managed funds. It's what people do, but if you did something different, it would immediately make you give you access to a niche that others don't. Hang on. Yeah, I think, yeah, Lady Fern Sewing, I think that a subscription thing would be what's up. And particularly as these boomers die, I think you and I've talked about this, and you're going to be dealing with younger people that have smaller portfolios. You probably are going to they're too expensive to operate to charge those low percentage rate annual fees or whatever. So doing it on a monthly basis doesn't seem unreasonable. If somebody's paying $219 or whatever for online coaching, it doesn't seem to be crazy for them to pay $99 a month to get a portfolio managed and advice at the end of the year on how to minimize their taxes and all of that kind of stuff. Adam says, have you ever heard of the Rule of 40 for software businesses? No, I have not. Matt Rogers says, how much money do I need to spend to buy a good cowboy hat for working outside and sweating all day? I have a big ass head, if that matters. Well, Atwoods around here sells hats, and there's a hat manufacturer called Atwood. It's not the same as Atwoods, the farm supply store, but Atwood makes a pretty darn good straw hat, and they're like $30. They're pretty darn good. Nothing wrong with that. I paid about $125 for this hat. It's a Rodeo King. It's a 25X hat. It's a lot of venting. It's a great hat. It's worth it. It's worth it. Lady Fern Sewing. My fellow millennials don't have the savings on average to be putting up hefty investment funds. Yeah, I know. You're probably going to end up offering them a package of services, which include portfolio management, personal finance counseling, credit counseling, and life goal counseling. Set them down. What's your credit score? Oh, when do you want to buy a house? You're getting married. What are the things you need to be doing so that you get a decent mortgage rate? Plus, you're contributing to your, retirement funds, etc. And charging that on a monthly basis. Taylor Turner says, do you view business debt the same as personal debt? Not necessarily, but maybe. Not necessarily, but maybe. When you get started out, you're almost certainly going to have to have a note to buy a small business, probably, but there are all kinds of ways to do that. Small business administration loans are mostly awful and not worth fucking with, but you can often get a tote the note deal on small businesses, and those are very good. That gives you skin in the game. It gives the seller skin in the game, and yeah, it's not a bad deal. But in general, I do not care for debt. You're almost going to have to get a mortgage to get a house. You're almost going to have to get a note to buy a business. If you need to buy a forklift, you need to pay cash for it. Sorry. Yeah, she says, I should sell Let's Unfuck Your Shit packages. Yes. Yeah, people need help. Their boomer parents can't help them. They don't know how to manage their finances, but you can do it. Darby says, is it pretty much necessary to have liability insurance for online coaching? Yes. But back to our man's question here about buying a property and moving his shop and trying to get a couple of different revenue. Hey, Whitmore Handmade, getting another couple of revenue centers together. And he says, am I overlooking something? I don't know that you're overlooking anything, but at the core of your question here is, it's really about acquiring customers. And then, of course, when you acquire a customer, you have to have machine capacity to deal with them, right? Hey, Ethan Baker. So, back to my point from question number 2, if you understand the sales process for your organization and other organizations, you can get an idea of what the cost of a customer acquisition cost is. Like, what does it cost to get a new client, in both in time and in money? So if you know what it costs to get a client, and you see that a business that's for sale has long-term contracts with a certain number of clients, you can figure out what it would cost you to get those. It might cost you, if somebody has 5 good clients, for example, it might cost you $130,000 to have a salesperson go obtain those. So, when you're looking at, should you buy an existing machine shop? Maybe. So often you can buy, small businesses for, frankly, the cost of the equipment. So, keep your eye out. If you can pick one up for the cost of the equipment plus something on top, they call it blue sky or customer goodwill, or something on top that's reasonable for the book of business, and it doesn't cause you to put on a bunch of debt, maybe you should do it. You've got to look at them on a case-by-case basis. They're not like Ford F-250s where they're all pretty much the same price. You'll have to look, at each of these deals. And Andrew says, maybe not overlooking, but something to keep in mind is managing a supplier is a different problem than managing your own shop. Yeah, you can't actually manage suppliers. Yeah. Infinite Banking by Nelson Nash, genius or retarded? I don't know anything about Nelson Nash or infinite banking or any of that. I don't know. To this question about buying another business versus, expanding organically and buying a property and all that, every time you have an opportunity to evaluate a business for purchase, you should do it. Because you might find that it's a bargain. You might find that your business is a bargain. You'll learn a lot every time you do that. So, look at every one of them that you get an opportunity to look at. Seek out opportunities to evaluate businesses for purchase, even if you're not in a position to do it. We don't want to mislead anybody about our intentions to purchase, but even if you're not sure that you can, I think you should continually be looking for opportunities to buy. 4, keep your questions and comments coming. I'm enjoying this. 4, as far as finances go, I'll work at Converge Core on the weekends for 3/12s, while working at my own shop the other 4 days. Savage. I'll take advantage of the steady income and benefits as I establish myself, as well as having all of their industry experts there to solve my problems and give me advice. Clever. I'm also planning on coming in on my days off to have them train me on the equipment I haven't used yet, like the 5-axis machines and such. I think I have a good chance to, as long as I stay out of debt, then nothing should be able to take me out of the game. What hazards should I be looking out for? What hazards should you be looking out for? Well, don't steal any customers from them. Don't do anything shady. Learn, right? Learn as a tradesperson. Learn about your industry, but don't do any sort of wacky corporate espionage kind of stuff. Don't do anything to hurt those people. Learn everything you can. Learn how to run that business, because I don't know, maybe you'll end up running that business. So don't get in trouble in that way. Make sure that you don't get into a non-compete situation that doesn't allow you to apply your craft. And what other hazards should you be looking out for? The HR department. The HR department is disgusting. I'm almost to the point nowadays where I just recommend that people just get canceled immediately. Just like walk in and just get canceled immediately. Just declare off the bat that women shouldn't have the vote or something like that, and just get canceled, and then find a way to live, because then you're free. A friend's son is getting into welding. Is that a good career? Yeah, it is. I mean, I just finished up, a semester of welding school, and was in there with a bunch of young people who want to be welders. About half of that class doesn't have any hope of being a high quality 5G 6G welder. Most of them don't. The other half would probably be able to obtain the certifications and everything. A bright young person who learned about welding. He didn't just go get the training so that they can lay down the welds, but actually learned about how it works, why it works, and so on. I'm convinced that within just a few years, that person would be a rock star, would be a supervisor, and so on. I saw a lot of people that were good welders, that were excellent welders, that could pass the tests, never failed an X-ray, everything looked great. They were day in, day out, were productive and put together good welds, but they didn't know what was going on, so they couldn't train other people. They weren't great at problem solving. They didn't really understand the processes. They were trained. They weren't educated in welding, but it's there to be had. So if somebody wanted to get in there and get educated about welding, you could make a good career of it. And even if you're just a good, trained, and you're a good, pipeline welder, pressure vessel welder, you would do well. Early Retirement Extreme by Jacob Kind Fisker. I have no idea. I don't read any of that personal finance stuff. I don't read any of it. It's almost all wrong, and I quit reading it 15, 18 years ago. Yeah, I mean, none of that stuff is complex or surprising. Avoid recurring expenses, be frugal, be cautious with your money, and give yourself a chance. I mean, that's all there is to it. Adam Darby says, are there any businesses that you regret not buying, or the opposite? I was just telling my wife the other day, she ran into a guy in Tulsa, and I said, well, that she's old so-and-so, or that guy is old so-and-so's brother who owned that business I kept trying to buy, and he never would, we never could get a deal together. And she's like, no, I didn't know that. And I really regret that I wasn't able to buy that. It wasn't for trying. The guy was a fool, and he didn't do it. He was in the same industry I was in, but his business wasn't as good as mine. He really couldn't compete with me, and as a result of that, I could take what he had and immediately make more money from it than he could have. And this sounds arrogant, but it's just the truth. And since I could take what he had and immediately make more money with it, that means I could pay him more for that business than almost anybody else could. And I put very, very good deals in front of him several times, and he didn't take it. And he'll never get the kind of deal that I was going to offer to him. And if I had managed to swing it, then it would have been very good for me, because I did well on my exit, and it would have just made my exit in 2018 even better. And then you ask in the opposite, are there any I regret buying? No. Sometimes they don't go as well as you thought, or sometimes they go better, or whatever, but there's no sense in regretting it. No, I've gotten my butt kicked and so on. It's okay. It's all part of it. Every time I make a decision, I do it based on my best judgment at the time. So if later on I find out that I was wrong, I still did it based on my best judgment. There's no sense in, regretting that or whatever. I've tried to do everything I could with my best judgment, and sometimes that's not adequate, but it's all I have at the time, so I'm not going to be regretful about it later. And one of the reasons I don't have to be regretful about it is because I don't lie and cheat and steal, and I do my diligence, so I don't get surprised. I just might misjudge, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. 5, he says, I think someone else. No. 5, I think something else I should be doing while I am at Converge Corp is to make as many contacts as I can. Everyone in the trade hates the fakeness and gayness of management. Yes. I think I can get in a good position to move people over to my shop in a year or two as they get canceled. Is there any move I should start making? No, just, figure out who's good at what they do. Um, you know, uh, be friendly with the people that have got some character and are good people, and get their cell phone numbers and keep in touch with them. It's always good to know people anyway. Keep in touch with them and go eat lunch with them when you can, or catch a breakfast or a cup of coffee or whatever. And someday your business will grow and you'll need some help, and you can call some of those guys. Uh, uh, just just figure out who are good tradespeople, who are good people, and stay in touch with them. That's just probably a good rule for life in general. But I don't think you need to worry about poaching somebody or getting them to go with you. If you do what you're supposed to do, and you're figuring out who are virtuous folks, you'll be able to make a few phone calls when you need help, and be able to get that help. Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. 6. He says, I've read Rules for Radicals. Social justice warriors always lie. Social justice warriors always double down. I am currently reading Unrestricted Warfare. I also have a few books like My Years at General Motors to learn more on vertical horizontal integration, among other business practices. What other books should I start reading along these lines to defend myself? You got to read Plato. You got to read Plato. You got to read Aquinas, and you got to read Aristotle, right? Really. I think, he said Rules for Radicals. You should probably read Edward Bernays' Propaganda. Manufacturing Consent by, oh my goodness. Well, there are two of them. There are two books called Manufacturing Consent. One of them was written in the 20s by, I can't remember his name. Another one written by Noam Chomsky, and they're probably both worth reading. They are both worth reading. Oh my gosh, he's the father of modern advertising, that wrote the Manufacturing Consent. Oh my goodness. No, well, Chomsky wrote one, but there was an earlier one from in the 20s. It'll come to me here in a minute. Oh my goodness. Yeah, and probably read a little Nietzsche, and just keep your head on a swivel. Running a small business that cranks out a tangible product, I think, is pretty good armor against bullshit. You end up being very hard-nosed about things, because when you create a tangible product, you're so closely tied to reality. If you make mistakes, the product won't come out properly. The product fails, or the profitability goes away. There's no social science in creating, machine parts, like this guy is doing. So, I think that as folks that have been rooted in that sort of world, we end up having a sense for what's bullshit. So be very, very sensitive to what's BS, and be confident that you do know what you know. And when you smell that BS, perk right up and be aware that it's happening. Having run some pretty decent-sized small businesses, I look at somebody like Elon Musk, and I realize, he's not running anything. And not only that, but Tesla isn't a business. It might be an enterprise that's built to extract subsidy monies and DARPA research funds and so on, but it's really not a business. And that's nothing that I'm going to invest in as a result. The stock may become very, very valuable, but not because it's a business, but because Tesla will have been chosen to be a winner at some point by people handing out green subsidies and so on. But you can You can smell that shit a mile away. You'll see small businesses that are put together strictly to pump them and dump them. They put businesses together strictly in order to sell them at some point. And I'm just not interested in that. I can smell it 1,000 miles away. I think it's a stupid thing to do. If you build your business to be maximally profitable and efficient, it'll sell and it'll get a big number. Um, yeah, and I think that's the thing to focus on. So, he's talking about reading these books. So it's not just read the books, but it's also rely on your instincts. So when you smell garbage, call it as such and know it. Do you have any other advice for business owning and growing, as well as keeping it safe from the culture war? Oh my goodness. Yeah. Um, Business owning and growing. Yeah, you need to spend some money early on employee handbook and advice from an attorney on how to keep yourself from being sued under EEOC, or, well, that's not really a suit, but dealing with EEOC complaints or complaints under the Civil Rights Act of 1965, all that sort of HR garbage. So spend some money on that early. It'll grieve your soul. It'll cost you thousands of dollars, but that's cheap. Uh, Probably never get an HR department. Just pay your attorney to fire people and have those talks. It'll cost you, but it's cheaper than having an HR department. On top of that, you're not big enough to have an HR department, even part-time. A part-time HR person won't be any good, and they're just going to subvert your business and fuck you up anyway. HR people are antithetical to good business. So just find yourself a good attorney and have that attorney's office function as the HR department. The employees won't like it, but fuck them. Growth is interesting because the advertising world is so messed up. Um, for example, Online Great Books was having a great deal of success for a couple of months, advertising these gateway sessions, we called them. People would get to come and do a free seminar at Online Great Books, and then a large percentage of those people in the free seminars would convert to full members of our program, and it was a profitable way for us to market directly to clients or advertise directly to potential clients. And then it just stopped working. It literally stopped working in the course of 1 week. Advertising is a mess. It is not an objective, real thing anymore. Facebook messes with their advertising algorithm all the time. Google does the same thing. So just grow organically. Have a sales force. Do cold calls every week. Buy display advertising. If you can, in the trade magazines. If you can do online advertising for a reasonable cost, do it. I just dropped the paper. Hang on. By all means, do that, but be careful with it, because the online advertising game is mostly a scheme. If you don't, so you need to have a way to directly contact potential clients. So, build an email list, build a telephone list, contact those people on a regular basis and get them to buy. So grow slow and grow on your own. They can't cancel you if you grow on your own. If you go and find every single client you've got, they can't stop you from doing that. Yeah, and be careful about who you do business with. If they start making demands of you, walk off. We had a Fortune 500 client one time call me and said, it's time to renew the contract. I'm like, okay, whatever. Went and met with them. They put in the contract that they were going to that they would be able to audit my books, and I said, no, you can't do that. And they're like, well, that's our policy. And I said, well, my policy is that you can't. And They pressed the issue and they wouldn't compromise on it, and I just walked off from the deal. It was a huge deal. They had been a huge client for a long time, and I walked off from it. And I'm glad I did, because um, I mean, I know what the game is. They audit your books. They tell you what they learn from auditing your books. What your operating margins are. They then learn what percentage of your business they are, and then they use that to beat you up on price. And it takes you time and effort to, service their request to audit your. So the answer is no. So if these people, don't want to operate, they want to use your business outside of, how you operate. Show them the door. So do what you think's right. Create a great product or service. Execute on that. And if somebody wants you to do something, anything different at all, be very, very careful. Consider it at large, and say to yourself, is this request they are making something I would be willing to do for all of my clients? And if the answer to that is no, then leave. Fire them. Even if they're your biggest customer, fire them. I fired my biggest customer twice. It's fine. It's a little bit spooky, but it's fine. Yeah. And if you have a social justice you read Social Justice Warriors Always Lie, and SJWs Always Double Down. If you get one in your organization, whether it's a client or an employee, fire them immediately. Fire them immediately. I had one at Online Great Books the other day. Fired her immediately. Here's your money back. Best of luck to you in all the future. Fire them immediately. Matt Rogers says, my friends and I are starting a ranching operation inspired by guys like Joel Salatin and Greg Judy. Every USDA processor stays busy. That seems to be a big bottleneck. Do you think it's worth it to open our own? A lot of people are doing that right now, Mr. Rogers. Around here, you can't get an animal processed around here without calling in some serious favors. Maybe. I don't know what it takes to get that USDA certification. Around here, you can sell honey and a certain number of chickens every year without having that certification. I don't know. Maybe. There was a processor north of here that had gone out of business, or actually, I think the owners had retired, but the building was there, and I think the machines were still there. And I saw recently that someone had, bought that from them or leased it from them and opened back up and was operating. So I don't know. I think it's a weird business. Marmalade Cream says, wanted to ask this earlier but had to log off. What do you think about raising rates on long-term clients versus acquiring new ones at higher rates? I typically don't like to raise prices in general. I mean, existing clients are cheaper to have than the one you don't have, because you don't have you've already paid your customer acquisition costs and, whatever. So the first, I mentioned our pricing strategy earlier. The price increases were rolled out in the pricing strategy for new clients first, of course. But they would eventually get to the long-term clients as well. Hey, Jason Cobb. So, inflation is really high right now, and it's going to be. So I think that you may have to raise it on those existing clients, and that's okay. That's okay. You'll lose some, but that's okay. My advice, though, is when you raise it enough that you won't have to do it again for a year or two. Well, I say a year or two, that you won't have to do it again for 2 years. Don't raise it just enough. Raise it enough that you don't have to readdress that pricing issue unless there's hyperinflation for quite some time. I don't like to go back to them over and over again for price increases. We would often, at Data Storage, we would lock prices for 3 to 5 years. We had some customers that were year to year because that's what they requested, and that was fine with me. But again, we would lock them for 3 to 5 years. But I can't imagine doing that now because inflation is high and is getting higher. Well, there are the answers for the questions that this guy sent to me. Those are just my answers. I don't know if they're the right ones, but I've done okay, and I don't know. That's what those answers are. What my experience tell me to give. So hopefully that's helpful to somebody. Yeah, that's always interesting. It makes me think about when somebody sends those questions, sends a list of questions like that. It always makes me think about what I've done, reevaluate things I've done, think about what I want to do in the future, and all that. It's interesting. I appreciate him. I appreciate him sending that. I got quite a few DMs also of more boomer lies. So maybe tomorrow we'll do another boomer lie stream. Um, yeah, and yeah. Well, we can just do this right now. I don't want to. The boomer lies, and we'll probably have to cover this again tomorrow. The boomer lies didn't start out as lies. Well, so many of the things that the boomers hold to be true and continue to spout weren't lies. They weren't untrue in the beginning. But the boomer just doesn't, they're just not able to reevaluate that stuff and see how it no longer holds. And and because they think they're eternally young, um, they just can't see their position in life and understand that perhaps their experience is old and no longer applies, and they're just not able to evaluate, these things they think are true, like, go to college, and uh, yeah, and they're just so frustrating as a result of that. Uh, they weren't wrong for their time, right? Go to college if you can. Don't you work hard and wait tables and pay for school. There's no reason to get in debt. Uh, have a firm handshake and look them in the eye, and all you need is grit. Well, that probably worked from 71 to 97. I get it. That's fine. But it doesn't work anymore, and they're so the things that they're saying used to be true and they're not anymore, and they've turned into lies, and they're just unable to see that. Matt Rogers, boomer lie. The answer to postmodernism is modernism. Yeah, yes, yeah. Progress, progress, progress. There's always progress. Technology will fix this. We will progress beyond this. We will become a more moral and more advanced species. Crazy, crazy. There, I've got some dear friends who they recently found out they're going to be grandparents, and they're 49. They'll be 50 by the time the kid gets here, the grandkid gets here, and the son that's having the child is 24. Well, who will be the father? Of course, his wife is having the kid. Is 24. He'll be 20. Maybe he's 25. But they're 50 years old, and they'll be grandparents, and they've just graciously just stepped into that, and they're not going to end their life as 48, 49, 50, 51-year-old people suddenly, and change, and like suddenly have blue hair, and she's not going to wear an apron all the time and just do nothing but bake cookies. But um, I've been watching them, and they sort of graciously accepted this role, and the female friend, she's put together the baby shower, and is excited about all of that stuff, and is already sort of being the I don't know, maybe not the matriarch, but being the older lady who's there to help the grandma, and yeah, Generation X is just doing a much better job. They don't have the midlife crisis. We stay married far more than the boomers did. We homeschool the kids at an enormous rate. Um, Generation X certainly has its faults, but Generation X is doing. You can see the difference, is what I'm saying. I'm not here to blow smoke about how awesome Generation X is, because they're not. They're cynical and mean, and I'm all those. I'm those things too. But you can just see, like, culturally, they're stepping into those traditional roles in a much more graceful way. You're just not going to hear Generation X people talk about how 50 is the new 30. They just they're just they don't dye their hair. They don't dye their gray hair at the same rate. Uh, they don't seem to. That's the same rate that baby boomers did. You know, I know baby boomer women who are pushing 70 that dye their hair like coal black, and it looks like they look like monstrous witches, but they just can't bear seeing the gray hair. And you know, so many. Well, my wife doesn't dye her hair. This lady I was talking about, that's getting ready to be a grandma, she doesn't dye her hair. They've just been much more gracious and graceful in moving into that sort of generative, later part of life. And those boomers just, man, they just won't do it. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. What else, all? Well, it's 15 minutes till 8 here on Oklahoma time. I enjoyed. Jay is the one that sent these pictures. Yeah, or not these pictures, these questions. I really enjoyed that. That was great. So send those in if you guys want me to work on them. I enjoy that. I don't know. Hopefully the listeners enjoy that. I'll be putting this out on Scott Stream. The cicada noises in the background and everything. Zach says 50 isn't the new 30. 30 is the new 50. 30 is 30. I get the joke. But yeah, 30's the, it is what it is. I'm 46. I trained today. I got a little sciatic nerve pain in my right butt cheek. When I lock out a deadlift real kind of overly aggressively, it zings down my leg. I know what it is. I've dealt with it before. But it's going to mess me up for a number of weeks. And, I was just talking to my wife. I was like, I just don't know that I don't know that I'm going to get any new PRs. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, of course you can, Yeah, I could, but I'm just not willing to do what it takes for me to get PRs at this point. I'm old enough that, well, first of all, I was strong enough when I was setting PRs that it was no trivial thing. My food had to be on point, my sleep had to be on point, everything had to be right. And, my food, I don't need to weigh 240. It's too heavy. So I need to cut back the food. I don't sleep as well as I did because I'm not 40, I'm 46, and I'm not getting any younger. The sciatic nerve thing comes back. I continue to train, but anyway, I'm coming to terms with the fact that I'm probably not going to hit any new PRs, and maybe it's not because there's a physical limitation, but I'm moving into a different part of my life, and I have a lot of boomer clients for online coaching, and they just don't get it. They're in their 60s and they're just pushing to get PRs, but they're in their 60s, and a dude in his 60s will detrain in 5 or 6 days on certain lifts, and it's just so precarious, and they just keep pushing for PRs, and they're continually disappointed, and they think that they're driven type A people. That's what they tell me, but they're not. They're delusional, and they're not at peace with where they are, and I find it really frustrating, and I'm having to come to terms with that. It's not easy necessarily. Hey, Chris, it's not easy necessarily, but we have to do that. Well, actually, we don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. You could be a boomer and just chafe against it and be in your mid 60s and be just like chasing PRs with your fucking biceps and triceps tendonitis, and like just beat up all the time. Meanwhile, your grandkids are like slipping you by, whatever. Matt Rogers says Gen X is our tech overlords. I guess you mean like Dorsey and Zuckerface, I guess. Guys, it's not really them. It's not really them. It's not really Musk. It's not. Zuckerberg's an idiot. Musk is a retard. Dorsey's a hobo. These guys are anointed to have those roles. Somebody else is the overlord. They're the head. They're the figurehead. Zach says, what's the cost to get a new PR? I would have to get virtually all my meals right, not miss any training sessions, and probably train on the order of 12 hours a week for a year to 18 months to run up to my old PRs. Might break them, might not. I've gone, when I was training really hard and working hard, I've gone, 17, 18 months before adding anything on the deadlift, for example. So, yeah, I don't know. Lady Fern says, that conversation around what is appropriate for your current phase of life, training or otherwise, is so important. Yeah, and the boomers can't do it. Fitness is fit for purpose, not PRs. We all agree competitive athletes pushing hard for PRs aren't healthy. We have a hard time admitting that setting PRs as we get older and purpose changes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, but for a guy in LP or an early intermediate, PRs are a good thing to chase. They're a proxy for, being fit for purpose. Because most people aren't even anywhere close to their biological, predetermined capability. So for a while we had to chase them, but for me now I don't know. And I've been losing weight. I look like shit. I've lost 15 pounds, but I don't look great because I'm 46 years old. I look better than most 46-year-olds. But what am I going to do? I mean, be upset about it. Be a boomer. Get lipo on my neck. Like what? What am I supposed to do? I've got kyphotic, so I've got chins, whatever. So I just need to be strong and do what I'm supposed to do, which at this stage in my life is what I'm supposed to do is help my daughters move into adulthood and help them create, these lifelong relationships that they're supposed to be moving towards, meaning marriage. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. And, and if I squatted, 290 for a couple of triples today, and it was heavy, that's not even close to where I've been, and that's fine, because I'm doing the other things I'm supposed to do. Pilgrimaging says, what advice do you have for a millennial with 4 kids under 10? I'm giving my best years with these kids to a job. The family farm is nearly impossible due to taxes and property prices. Well, that is an interesting statement. I'm giving my best years with these kids to a job. I believe, and this may not be true, but I believe it to be true, that the most important thing you can do as the dad is to model how to be responsible, to model that you are keeping them safe, that you are making sure their needs are being met, and taking care of their mother. Most dudes are not good at caring for small children. Women have more patience for it. Children are drawn to them. Charity, Charity, my wife, could take an infant, a hysterical, crying, sweaty, screaming baby, and calm that baby down in moments. And sometimes I could never get our kids to calm down and soothe them and rock them and pat them and sing to them and get them to calm down. But Charity can do that, and and I think that story just illustrates, like, most guys really aren't that. The important role for men is typically not that sort of hands-on stuff for the under 10. Okay, the older the kids get, the more important you will become. I remember talking to my Uncle Everett one day. He was in my office, and I said, if I keep this up, I think I'm going to be able to retire when I'm in my early 40s. And he said, well, and never have to work again. And he said, well, that would be great. But he said, even if you can't retire forever, he said, I highly recommend that you quit work when your kids are 14 years old or so, and just be there and parent the kids, even if that means you have to go back to work later after they leave home, and then work into your older age, perhaps. I think he was right. I'm not going to have to go back to work in the same way I did, but I'm very, very thankful that I did what I did the way we did it. So, my job is more important every day, and Charity's is, frankly, I'm sorry ladies, less important. The mom is more important when the baby's brand new. The dad is more important, I think, when the child is 18. Now, I just talked about how these friends of mine are getting ready to be grandparents. I think that the mom, who is going to be a grandmother, is becoming more important yet again. More important yet again. So don't sweat it. Your job is to go to the job. Your job is to earn. All right? So you keep it up there, pilgrimaging. You keep it up, man. The family farm is nearly impossible due to taxes and property prices. I get it. Save those shekels. Do not send those kids to school. You bust your ass, and you make sure that they don't have to go to school, and you don't send them to daycare where some Guatemalans putting cigarettes out on them and shit. Yeah. Kirk says, I never saw my parents fight. I never had to wonder if we would eat. During the years that my folks were struggling to keep us afloat, you had no idea. Right. Right. That's right. That's your job, dude. That's your job. Mom gets her spot back with the grandkids, Zach says. I think that's true. Somewhat of a spook says, that's one of the reasons I decided to go all in on machine shops. I want a family business where the kids can come of age and I can teach them the practical skills and spend all my work days with them. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, if you can get a small business going where the kids are up there. I had a bassinet, and then later one of those little wind-up swings, baby swings, and a playpen in my office for about 5 years, 6 years. My kids were up there all the time. My sister worked for me, and the kids were up there all the time. There were tricycles out in the warehouse, and yeah, it was great. It was great. Pilgrimaging says my wife, their mom, is homeschooling them, so we got that going. That is such a big deal, man. You're doing great. You're doing great. If you don't own the house, if you're busting your butt, if you don't see the kids every day, that's tough. But if that's what it takes so that she can be home and that the kids don't go to the government school, you are killing it. Now, if you were a boomer, you would put them in daycare. They would come home. They would ride, when they got older, they would ride the school bus home, and they would let themselves in with their own key, and they would watch the after-school special, which was full of nothing but fake and gay shit. Nancy Reagan would yell at them about how they were all going to get AIDS, or that they were going to be drug addicts, and meanwhile, you and your wife would both work, but you might get to have a boat. You know, the boomers, I have had boomers that get on to me about, like, well, you keep griping about it. Like, what are you going to do? What are you doing about it? You just gripe. No, we don't just gripe. We're doing. Like, pilgrimaging here is a millennial by his own admission, and he's fixing it. His kids are being parented and they're being homeschooled, and he's doing what is necessary. And they're foregoing material comfort for the kids. They're transmitting culture, they're taking care of the kids. And the boomers just can't comprehend how that's how we fix these things. They don't understand where it went wrong and then how it gets fixed. But you're doing it. You're fixing it. Somewhat of a spook, you're fixing it. Good for you, Ben. Good for you. What else as the sun gets low in the west here? Drink some more water. Just not getting divorced is a big leg up. Yes. Yes. And, yeah. I was thinking about this. I've been thinking about these boomers. And I was thinking about divorce, and of all of the people that I have had meals with, I mean, I've met a lot of people in my life, right? Everybody has, but we don't eat dinner with them all, right? That's a different level of acquaintanceship if you had dinner with someone. And of all the people I've had dinner with, there really aren't that many of them that have gotten divorced. And maybe it's just the circles I run in, but I'm going to say that the divorce rate in my acquaintance is something like 10 or 15%. And like I said, maybe that's just the circles I run in, but my generation doesn't seem to be getting divorced. We can go look it up. They're not getting divorced like the boomers did. Of course, the millennials just aren't getting married in general. But I think the Zoomers will. The Zoomers are, Generation Z is much more conservative than the millennials or the boomers. Sex says, between military deployments, truck driving, and working nights at a hospital, I miss most of my kids' early childhood, but they're teens now. We've always homeschooled, and it seems to be working out. You bet. Dad's job is to model what it's like to be a dude. Early on, it's your job to model what it's like to be a dude and to make sure everybody's safe and provided for. The kids don't always listen, but they watch. Yeah, they don't always listen, but they watch. And so you're showing them what a good mate looks like. They're going to have an idea of that's maybe even subconscious of what a good mate looks like. That's going to influence their dating strategy. I promise you. Yeah. This is why the millennials are so fucksored. Is they've got the boomer parents more than they've got the boomer parents and some ex-parents. The ones with the boomer parents are just like, there's early boomers and late boomers, and the late boomers are just degenerate. Current culture fails to make this distinction in roles. Yeah, they don't know. Current culture doesn't say anything healthy about masculinity and what it is to be a dude. Right? It's either, it's toxic, or you actually see the toxic stuff, like the pickup artist, world, or the sort of, we know about, like, female impersonators, like trannies. We know about males who dress up like women, like drag queens. There's also, like, these male impersonators, these men who impersonate males. Like you'll see like Rich Piana. You know, poor guy. Um, Hulk Hogan. You know, so you just don't see just solid dudes doing solid dude stuff day in and day out in regular culture. But that's our job. And before the kids are 10 to 12 years old, that's probably our main job, I think. Yeah. All right. Well, this has come to a halt. Um, if you want to send me some boomer lies, DM those to me, or you can email Scott at scotthambrick.com, and we'll do another show on boomer lies, and say a little bit more about the boomers. I don't want to be like as down on them as I am, and I am down on them. They can't help it. They're a product of their times, and their times were good for a long time, and they're still good for it. It's still good for them in many cases, and they just can't see the problems. And that's not okay. They should be able to open their eyes, see reality on reality's terms, and come to terms with that, and then be able to draw conclusions. But they're so often not able to do it. But we'll talk about them some more on the next one. I hope y'all enjoyed it. I did. So send me those questions. That's great fun, and I'll be dropping this one here on Scott Stream and on scotthambrick.com. Thank y'all.